To everyone joining us today. Welcome to our 1-hour webinar. This is an introduction to audio editing. My name is Anita. I will be keeping an eye out on the chat box and also the question function as well. So just a little bit of information about today's session. It's going to be running for about 50 minutes or we are message that I'm having some problems with my audio. Jonathan, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now. Okay, well, it seems that...
So I'm getting a message. Sorry, we're just finding...
you do seem frozen for me, Anita. I don't know if that's the same for everybody else out there.
It's an issue with my internet connectivity, so I'll throw to you in a bit. Hi, Jonathan.
Okay,
why do you do audio?
So, do audio. I work for these presentations, and this one we have here today is a bit about just getting used to the program. So it's for folks that if you're not so familiar with it, we're going to show you what the program is all about and how it works. And it's just a sort of brief everything that it does and why it's designed for people that make broadcasts and news productions and all of that. So we're going to show this to you here, do some screen sharing and that kind of thing. And Anita said this, but so there are some, there is a chat box here and a question box that's below. And so the chat box is the idea is you can put things in the chat as you would in other, streams here. But the questions are if you want us to specifically look through the questions and answer them. And at the end, we'll go through any questions that you might have. Okay. So without further ado, I'm just going to get into it here. And give us if our audio cuts in and out or anything like that. So things happen, as you know. So, all right. So here we go. All right. So here we are we're going to give this this introduction to audio editing here with Hindenburg. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about how would you use this to start off, and we're going to kind of base this by how would you do this, and then how would you do something a little more complicated and a little more complicated after that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a single host, meaning one track of audio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the biggest ideas in the universe. I'm your host, Sean Carroll. Today's big idea, I'm pretty sure, is going to be one of your favorites. It's definitely one of my favorites. The idea is gravity, by which we mean, of course, general relativity, Einstein's theory of gravity.
Okay, so that's, pretty easy to understand. It's one track of audio. It's just one person talking. And that's where we're going to start. So we're going to get into this, looking at how you would do that, how you'd select a microphone, arm a track, do some recording, and do a punch-in, which is also called a pickup, meaning you stop the recording and start again. Okay. So here is Hindenburg, and I'm just going to open up a new blank session here. Okay. So this is what it looks like. And we're going to be looking at this top track over here, and I'm just going to explain some bits of what makes this up and what you're looking at here. One detail that has come up for us, by the way, is that sometimes I'm viewing this in full screen mode, And it might be easier for you to see some of the parts if you put this in full screen as well. So just the thing there. The idea with Hindenburg is that it's a DAW, a digital audio workspace. And most digital audio workspaces, or DAWs, are used to make music. And so they're very complicated because there are a lot of things that you can adjust in there. So if you're making a radio program or a podcast or something, you don't necessarily need all that's there that's not relevant to what you're doing. And so the idea with this is that not only is it designed for that, it's designed to be easy to use and accessible for people. So one of the ways that it does that is that instead of having different windows for where your tracks are and mixers and faders and stuff, it's all kind of housed here on the sides of the tracks, all of this stuff over here on the left side. So we're going to talk about that. And then up on top, what these are just basic things that you would need to do. So they've made little icons here just so you can get to them easily. Okay, so this is stuff that you'd normally do in a session, like start a new session, open one, save. We'll get to some of these a little bit. And this stuff over here is to do with editing. We'll get to some of that in a little bit. On the left side here, this is the track that you're on. And if you select a different track, you're on this track. Okay, so I'm going to be on this top one for now. This right here, this icon underneath this is for input volume. And that means if you plugged like a USB microphone into Hindenburg, or use nothing and just use your computer mic, this is where you would adjust how much of that is going in. Now, I have something called an interface plugged in, which means that I adjust that in the interface, so this is kind of bypassed. This bit right here, this is for panning, meaning if you put it all the way to the right, it will come out of your right headphone. If you put it all the way to the left, it will come out of your left headphone if you're wearing headphones. For what we're doing, you're probably mostly just going to want to leave it right in the center. The icons underneath that, the first one is this, it has this little bullseye looking symbol there. We're going to talk about that. One sec. Next to that is mute, which means that you mute the entire track, or solo, which means that you're only hearing this track. That'll come up if you have a lot of different bits of audio on different tracks, and you only wanted to hear one of them. This next area here is where effects are housed. We'll sort of revisit that at the end. There's a drop-down menu here with some fancy stuff, but also is where you'd add tracks. And then underneath that is this area where you would select your microphone. Now, Hindenburg is automatically going to find any microphone that you plug into it, but you may have, a few microphones plugged into it if you're doing multi-track recording multiple people. So you would need to tell it what to do. So here's this little drop-down menu, and I'm going to select, this is my interface, what I happen to be using, and I'm going to select this first option here. Okay, and that's the mic that I'm talking into. So then the next thing I would do, once I found the microphone, and again, if you only have one, it's probably just going to find it automatically, is that I would press this icon here, and now the track is armed, and you can see that it's registering my voice here in this meter. So without doing that, there's no meter on. It's not ready to record. So you do that, and it's kind of like in a standby mode. It's ready, and then you have to tell it, I want to record now. At the bottom of this is this thing called a transport bar, and there are keyboard shortcuts for everything I'm going to demonstrate. I'll try to do a mixture of those things. I'm always going to tell you what the keys are, but I'll try to demonstrate it visually as much as possible too. So once I armed the track up here, down at the bottom, you see this blinking red light. And if I press this, it'll start recording now. And I can tell that it's starting to record because that is my audio being picked up, and it's in red. If you think about, the on-air sign, that's the idea. Once it's in red, it's on air, it's actively recording. So that's picking me up as I'm talking to you. So I'm going to stop the recording, and you could do that by coming down here and all that, but I'm just going to do it with a key command. So I've stopped the recording. Okay. And now you saw a couple things happen. The first thing is that this region, which is what this is called here, is now in yellow, which means that or gold, it's highlighted. So that's one thing that you saw happen. The other thing is that you saw it kind of adjust this volume. It sort of dragged it up. That's because we have this feature enabled called auto level. And what that means is that it's automatically adjusting your volume to be at an appropriate volume to work in the program. Now, you can turn this on or off. I think it's really easy to have it on for a number of reasons. Once you have multiple tracks, you'll know that they're all roughly in the same area of volume, so that one's not drastically louder than the other. And the other one is that if I was going to be doing a pickup, which I'm going to show you in just a second, or a punch in to be re-recording, you want to be able to make sure that the two parts match each other. So I'll show you that in just a sec. So now we have access, because we have some audio here, to all this stuff here, we'll get to in a minute. But there's one thing I am going to be using quite a bit, which is zooming in and out, which is up here. And I'm going to do this with a key command, just so I don't have to come up here to do it every time. And that key command is, I'm on a Mac, so I'm pressing Command. If you were on a Windows, it'd be Control. It's the same key. It's next to the space bar. And I'm pressing the plus and minus keys. And this is what it does. You zoom out or you zoom in to see it more. Okay. So that's what we're doing there. If you see this zoom in and out, it just means that I'm doing that with a key command. So this is this region and it's selected. If I click away from it, it's now in blue. Just means it's unselected. Okay. So we could listen back to it, picking me up as I'm talking to you. So I'm going to stop the recording. Okay, so that was me just going on and saying my thing. So that's how you would record a bit of audio. Now, it's not realistic that you're going to record an entire broadcast without making mistakes and starting and stopping. So if you were recording and then you made a mistake and you wanted to just pick that recording up, you would do this pickup. So what happens there is that as I click around, this white line, which is called the playhead, is moving around. It's moving around wherever I click into this file. So I'm going to put this playhead before I start speaking here, talking to you. So I'm going to stop the recording, and it's going to start recording right where I put the playhead. However, it would be great in a perfect world if I could hear the last bit of what I was saying before it just picked up again. And it comes with that enabled as well. It's called pre-roll. So it's going to start recording when it hits this white line, the playhead, but it's going to play the audio a couple seconds before so that I could hear it. And the idea there is that I could hear myself to match myself. So I'm not just kind of recording into a vacuum. Okay. So I'm going to start the recording now. Oops. All right. I got to record, enable the track. Okay. So now I'm going to start the recording, and it is going to record at the playhead, but give me that couple seconds of pre-roll. So that's picking me up as so now it hit that spot where it was, and it's picking me up again. And now I'm recording, and I just did a punch in. Okay. So when I stop it, you'll see that it's going to be selected now again, and it's going to do that auto level thing. Okay. And you can even see it visually that this matches this. The two regions are roughly similar to each other. So that's the idea. And everything with Hindenburg is designed to be set it and forget it. You just sort of put these features on, and you don't really have to think about them too much afterwards. They just kind of work. So now we have two regions. And let's talk about that, like what you're looking at when you're looking at this, for those folks who aren't familiar with audio. There are all these different things that you're going to do and can do to these regions. And you need all these different tools. Like sometimes you need to grab it, you need to pull it, you need to cut it away or whatever. So my mouse, you can see me moving my mouse around the screen here, is going to change. In Hindenburg, it automatically becomes a multi-tool, meaning it does all these different features, but you don't have to select a different thing each time. And the way that it does that is that if I'm hovering over certain parts of the region, it's going to look one way and do certain things. So if I'm over here in the bottom, it is in this I-beam. And the reason for that is that if I click and I do any dragging, I'm going to make this selection. So hopefully you can see that there. And the reason you're going to make selections has to do with editing and other things that come up later. So sometimes you need to do that. By the way, if you are doing that, if you have Hindenburg and you're practicing with this and maybe you selected something you don't want to, you just press the escape button and it'll go away. So it's really easy there. So that's one thing you'll need to do. But sometimes you'll notice that when I move my mouse to about the center of the region, it turns into this pointer arrow. And that's because sometimes I want to select this region over that region. I want to say, hey, I want this one, not this one. And the reason for that is sometimes you're going to take this and you're going to move it around. Okay. And when I move it, by doing that, I just clicked and was dragging on it. I just clicked with my mouse and I just pulled it somewhere. And you'll notice that this, then when I click and drag, it turns into this hand icon so you can move things around. The next part of the tool is if you go to the edge of the region, it becomes this trimmer tool. It looks like this symbol here. The reason for this is sometimes you want to actually just take a region and kind of just trim part of it away. Or you were working on it, you're like, oh, you know what? I wish I had all that back. We can just bring it all back. So that's the trimmer tool there. And then if you're on the top, it is also a trimmer tool. But instead of moving the region around, what this does when you click on it is this raises and lowers the volume. So that's a really, really handy tool because in some other programs, you have to select, I want the volume tool, I want this tool or whatever. And everything is kind of housed in one place because everything about this is designed to be, what do I need to do and how can I do it the easiest way? Okay. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at these different regions and how you would do the recording. Okay. So that's just the basics of how you would do one track of audio, for a podcast with a single host. But I'm sure you've noticed that, or a podcast or a news production with a single host. But there are more things that you're going to need to do other than select the microphone, arm the track, and so on. That's how you just get started. But then you might have things that are more elaborate. So now we're going to get into a roundtable recording. And what this means is this is a recording that is when you have multiple people in the same room. So more than one microphone plugged in and people talking at the same time, such as this.
Jamie, why are we here?
We're here because my dad's written a porno.
Your dad's written a porno?
Erotic literature.
Why? Previously on My Dad Wrote a Porno.
Jim grunted and Belinda thought she felt something entering her pussy. Oh my God.
If you have to ask.
Did the man know he was only tickling her?
Okay, so that is what we mean by a roundtable recording. There are more than one person in the room all having a chat. Okay, so let's talk about how to do this. This is where you're going to do with multiple microphones and recording with those, which is pretty easy. And some other fun bits here, which have to do with multi-track editing, this really handy tool called Magic Levels, and importing music into your podcast, if that's what you're going to be doing, or news production. Okay, so I'm going to open up a file here. Okay, so this is an example of a roundtable recording. What we have here are 4 people that were all in a room talking at the same time. And, it's kind of a mess because what you have there is you have a bit of microphone bleed. So what that means is if these four people are all in a room together, and they're all talking and there are four microphones, even if you are good about trying to avoid some amount of that bleed, it's going to be in there. So let's first talk about how you would even set up four microphones, okay? So the first one would be set up just as we did it before. This is where my microphone is plugged into. It's plugged into input number 1. So I select that and, record the track as normal. All I would do for the other microphones is, instead of selecting input 1, let's say I have one plugged into input 2, I'd select input 2. And now I could record on 2 tracks at the same time, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's how you would set up the different microphones. You do have to say, I want this microphone on this track. But it's really not too bad if you know where you plug stuff in. So now let's look at that. So these four people were having this discussion here. On this top track, I'm looking at Bob. Bob here is speaking, but it's been recorded on everybody else's track. So we're going to get to some tools with editing here in just a second. But if I were to have to do this various editing on all the tracks, it would be cumbersome, okay? We're going to listen to this for a second and just hear a bit of what this sounds like.
I'm Stephen Liccardi. I'm a social worker, spoken word poet, and performance activist.
Okay, so it sounds fine. And this always, we never know how things sound across the internet. But it sounds fine, but there is this kind of phasing effect because it's picked up in all of the different microphones. So there is this really handy tool where, again, everything is kind of put here to be, how can you make your life easier? So I'm going to select everything here. You can, by clicking on these different regions, you choose, I want this one or that one or this one or that one. If you hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, that's going to say, I want this one and this one and this one and that one. So that's one thing you could do. You also, and when you do that, by the way, here's what happens. If I click on this region and I move it, that region moves, okay? And I'm just going to undo some things periodically so they go back to the way that they were. So that's all that you're seeing there. If I hold down the Shift key and I say I want this one and that one, and I move it, they're both going to move together, okay? Now, if I wanted to select everything there, because I want something to apply to all of it, I'm going to press down a couple of keys. It's Option and Command on a Mac. On a Window, it's Alt and Control. It's the same keys, they're just named differently. And if I hold both of those down and press A, everything is going to be selected. So if I move it, it's all going to move together, okay? So the reason I'm selecting everything is that I'm going to put this fun effect on here to make my life easy, and it'll affect all of the tracks. So in the top here under Tools, there is this drop-down menu here. And I have this option at the bottom of this called Magic Levels. And Magic Levels is going to do this. So what it does is it reduces the amount of background noise. It detects when Bob up here is speaking, and it's limiting the amount of the time when he's not speaking. And you can adjust how much of this you want on there. If you can see it kind of pulling things down, and you could have it go to a certain amount, or you could have it be very subtle. It's up to you. So let's say I did that and I applied it to the file. So it all looks different. Let's hear how it sounds.
I'm Stephen Liccardi. I'm a social worker, spoken word poet, and performance activist.
Okay, and without it?
I'm Stephen Liccardi. I'm a social worker, spoken word poet, and performance activist.
So hopefully you can hear that. It's very audible for me. It really eliminates that phasing issue because of the microphone bleed. So that is a hugely useful tool that makes life just a lot easier. So one of those, there are a few of these features that exist in Hindenburg that, are designed to just be, make life easy so you can get back to telling your story. But in doing that and telling your story, you're going to have to cut stuff out. So, and you're going to have to make things go away. The way that you do that is with editing. So that's what all of these icons are up here. You can cut and copy, paste, some other things as well. We'll start here with the split point. What that does is it makes it so you can add one of these split points so that I can make one region into two regions. Let's look at clear. Clear is the same as delete. If I press delete on my keyboard or press this clear button, it's going to take this away. Sometimes that's what you want to do, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not that I want to take something away, meaning there'll be a gap in the space. I could cut it away too. And if I cut it away, what happens is, let's say I want to cut this away. It means that this region is going to snap next to this region when I cut this one away. So that's really good if you have maybe something you just want to cut out of the audio that you made. You just do that. And that's really not a problem at all if you have one track. But as you notice here, now this top track is going to be out of sync with these ones beneath it. So there are a couple of options you can do. You can make a selection that goes across all of the tracks. Then if you cut it out, they'll all go together. That's one way of doing it. Another thing that you can do, which is really handy, is you can do this thing called linking the tracks. So right now I'm working on the Bob track on top. If I go on this track here, I'm working on the Linda track. So any edits I make only affect Linda's track. And so on and so forth. But if I wanted to just make one edit or do one thing and just have it affect all of their tracks, what I could do is by holding down the Shift key, I could click on Sarah here, and all of these tracks get selected. And on any of them, I could right-click on their name, and you have this option to link these tracks. So now that I've linked these tracks, any edits that I do are going to affect all of them. Even if I click on some region or other, they're all going to be highlighted like that, right? So now if I were to make a cut, and you do that by making a little selection and pressing X, they all move together and cut together. So just some handy tools of how to use Hindenburg. And again, everything is designed to be what's the most efficient way that we can get you to do things, without having it being too cumbersome and all of that. I'm going to get back to the keynote. I just wanted to check in, Anita, and just see how everything was.
Yep, everything is great. We can hear everything. Are you able to hear me again, or is it still a bit touch?
I can hear you. All right.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
So I'll just mention something really quickly. So I didn't pop this into the chat before, but we have a community on Facebook. So if you want to watch this session back, it is being recorded and will be available there permanently. Otherwise, it will be available on our Facebook page and YouTube for the next 3 days. And I'll pop that into the chat in just a moment. And if you have any questions about any of the functions or anything, please use the question box to add that in. And at the end of this session, we're going to open up the tables and have a social lounge on AirMeet. So if you want to stick around, learn about each other's podcasts, I would highly recommend that you do that for today. So just wanted to give that info since I couldn't speak at the start. But carry on, Jonathan.
Okay, so yes, we're just going, giving a brief overview of everything. So back to this. So that's how you would record, multiple people all in a room, how you do those types of things. But in our world today, of course, much of what you're going to be doing is not doing that because things are remote. Sometimes that's just how things are going to be. So in a perfect world, we'd all be able to meet up with each other. It's an imperfect world. So we're going to talk about how to do a phone interview.
Charles Bolden is a former astronaut and NASA director and told us about the strategy.
During the Obama administration, we targeted Mars as the ultimate destination for humanity, but said we would spend 10 years, the decade of the 20s, in lunar orbit and then eventually down to the surface.
But why would NASA start with another moon landing instead of going straight to Mars, the real target?
trying to make sure that the technologies that we need to push human.
Okay, so that is what we mean by a phone interview. You've all heard them before. It's when you have somebody that has is talking into a microphone that's talking to somebody else that's on a telephone. But of course, we don't mean just a telephone these days, because by phone we mean any type of remote conferencing like Zoom, FaceTime, etc. With Skype and with some of the other ones, you can actually call people's phones as well. So it is a phone call. But one thing we do want to stress here is that this does come up, of course, but you're never going to get the same type of audio that you would get as if you had people speaking into microphones. That's why it sounds like they're on the phone. So because of that, you probably wouldn't want to listen to it too long. So can you do that in Hindenburg? Of course. What you can do is you can record directly from Skype directly into Hindenburg. And I'm going to show you a little video, actually, of how to do that.
In this example, we're going to look at remote recording and how you can do it easily in Hindenburg. So for this, we're going to need 2 tracks, the one that I'm speaking on and another track set up for Skype. It could be another platform, but we're using Skype today. So the top track is going to be set up just how you have set it up in the past. And the bottom track is going to be set up a little differently. For the input, we're going to select Soundflower. We're going to select the top option and the stereo option, but any of those would work. We're going to start recording both tracks in just a second, and you'll see that the top track is being recorded and looks as it normally would, but there's nothing going on in the Skype track just yet. We have to go into Skype and set that up. I'm going to show you how to do that now. So here we are in Skype. Okay, we're going right to the audio video menu. And that's where you can select what is the input. And here we see that my voice is being picked up. We selected the same one we did in Hindenburg. And here for the speakers option, it's usually set to default device. But we are going to select the Soundflower. So that means that the output now is going to be the Soundflower device. Now we can test this audio here, and you should see it being picked up in Hindenburg. All right, that's enough of that. You can see that it picked it up into Hindenburg. So let's go back into it. And we've stopped recording now, and you'll see that it's auto-adjusting. It's actually auto-leveling that. Let's take a listen. That's how you would record remotely for your interview session.
Okay, so that is the idea of how to do that. And I'm sure we'll get some questions about that. But basically, with audio, you're always saying, I want it to go in here and come out here. I want it to go into the microphone I'm speaking into and come out these speakers or these headphones. And what that Soundflower device is it just says, I want to go into, Skype or whatever. And I want it to come out instead of in headphones. I want it to come out into Hindenburg. Now you'll hear it, of course, if you're recording it, you'll hear, let's say you're doing an interview, you'll hear both parts. But the audio from Skype will be recorded right into Hindenburg. So that makes it easy to, just record right into it instead of having to import files and stuff. So that's one thing you can do. Things are getting a little bit more complicated now, but we're going to talk about why this is a tool that's being used for putting together news segments. And this is what we mean by that.
The Bank of England has been very heavily involved in the response to the Leave vote. Let's hear a clip now from Mark Carney, the bank's governor, just after the Leave vote was officially announced.
We've taken all the necessary steps to prepare for today's events, and in the future, we will not hesitate to take any additional measures required to meet our responsibilities as the United Kingdom moves forward. Thank you very much.
Any additional measures required? What will those measures be? What has the Bank of England been doing, and what can we expect it to do?
One, it's likely that they're going to cut interest rates. They're already very low, but they can probably cut a little.
Okay, so a news segment. these are getting more involved now. So we're going to talk about how to use, we've talked a bit about recording an interview and how to edit. We're going to talk about using this clipboard and making montages. All right, so here we go, back into Hindenburg. So let's say this is our news segment here. I'm going to talk about these over here, which is the clipboard. I'm going to get rid of some stuff here first, just so it's a blank thing that we're looking at here, which is how it would be with a blank session. So sometimes, let's say, these bits where Bob is speaking, you can see that he's speaking here and he's speaking here, but we don't really want everything else. All this other stuff where he's just kind of waiting around. So what you can do, the reason these clipboards are here is you can take things and drag them into the clipboard to easily assemble your newscasts. So what I did here is I made a selection, and if I hold down Command and drag it in, it'll be there in the clipboard, and it would have taken it from the file. If I were to take this section and instead of pressing Command, I pressed Option, and by Command on a Windows it'd be Control, and Option would be Alt, and I drag this into the clipboard. It's there just like the other track, but it leaves it in there. So you have a couple of options of how you can do that. But there's even a handy, super great shortcut for this. If I make this selection, and I'm so lazy I don't want to do any dragging, if I press down Option Command, and you see how there are 4 clipboards here. If I press Option Command 1, it's going to put it in that first clipboard for me just like that. Really simple. And let's say then I, went to Linda's track and I wanted, okay, this is the part I want from Linda when I listen back to it. But I want to put Linda in a different clipboard. I want to put her in clipboard 2. So I press Option Command and 2, and it puts her there. And if I want to put Mark in 3, well, I'll put Mark in 3, and so on and so forth. So you could do that and then just get rid of everything here because you have all the pieces you want to keep, and then you can just drag them out of the clipboard. There are shortcuts of that too. And you could assemble all of the pieces that you want like this. So that's the reason that, this is designed to be just really easy to use. And there's another menu here that we can bring up. This is called the favorites window, and it works just like the clipboards, except that the favorites window, whatever you drag in there is going to be there from project to project. So if I opened up a blank project, things are going to be in this favorites window. So I'm going to drag out a piece of music. That's what this is here. So let's say I have this piece of music here, and here it is.
So we wanted to know if you would be, willing and able to share some of your poetry with us.
Okay, so let's say, that was an intro, just hypothetically, to my show. And, I only want to do all that editing one time. Like I edit the music, maybe I put fades on it. We could talk about that in a sec. I can actually select all this stuff and drag it into the favorites window. And let's say I was on a blank session here and none of this was here. It's just totally blank, right? I could drag this out from the favorites window, and it's going to drag the whole thing, music and all.
Willing and able to share some.
So that's how that works, and that's why it's super handy to use. And everything, again, that's here is designed to be how can you make life really easy for folks making broadcasts. So that's the idea there. And that's how you would make a montage of different things. And this works with ambiance as well, room, natural sound that you collect, and you can add layers of it and do all kinds of interesting things. And you can save it in different places and easily assemble it. Okay, so that'll bring us to features and dramatic presentations.
Ladies and gentlemen, Metro Airways Flight 566 is now ready for boarding Gate 16. Metro Airways Flight 566, now boarding Gate 16.
People travel a great deal more around the world than they used to, and animals travel as well. Those two simple facts mean that deadly viruses will appear here and they'll kill or maim Australians.
So that's the idea there. It's getting more elaborate now. As you can see there, the session has a lot going on. But really, it's everything that we've just been looking at. It's just a little bit more elaborate with how it's set up. So how would you do that? This has to do with a number of things. Setting up your mood and rhythm, which you can do with sounds and ambiance, and how you would do things with fades and sound beds. I'll show you that really quickly. And these other tools that we have for tidying up the sound, making it sound better, and then publishing it out into the world so that when it gets hosted somewhere, it plays at the right level it's supposed to play at. So I'm just going to go over all of that really quickly here. Okay, so let's say this is our feature. And I can open up a feature that's more elaborate. Well, why don't I do that? With a lot going on. Okay, so here is this guy here. And you can see in the favorites window, everything is still there. It's the same stuff. So, here I have all kinds of things. I have, city soundscapes. This is about a factory. I have sewing machine sounds and all of that. So sometimes, as you can see here, these regions look like they have a lot going on. And that's because what happened to them is this thing called ducts and beds. So I'm just going to zoom in here. All right. So let's say under this region right here, I want this bit of ambient city sound to duck down. Instead of having to go in and automate it individually, if I make a selection here, I can just duck things down like this. And so what happens is the sound will be playing and it'll get really low.
Elliot Sklar is a professor of urban planning at Columbia. He says now more than...
And then it'll come back up. And there are all kinds of things you could do with that. Going from one interview to another, different things like that. You can fade things as well. You don't have to open up any other menus. There are a couple ways of doing it, but you can just click on the side of the regions here and have them fade out.
Garment workers, the city's attempt to restructure.
The real bottom line is...
Okay, so all kinds of things that you can do. So that's the idea there. And there are some other really handy tools like these markers that you put in where you mark up the file and you say, okay, this is when this part happens, this is when that part happens. You can add this thing called cue points to these regions. And what that does is that's like a marker that stays on this region. The reason you'd want that is if you had, when this happened, that right at that point in the file, that's when you wanted "Oh Christmas Tree" to start. Well, that's what's going to happen if you bring it in there. It's going to start right with this region there. So just some ideas, of things that you can do. There's an endless amount of things you can do. But again, it's all designed to be like really easy. Go grab it, put it in, edit it together. And as a lazy person myself, I'm the biggest fan of radio stations are going to have a standard of loudness. What that means is that if you're the BBC and you have 5 people that are producing content for you, you can't have one that's really loud and one that's really quiet. So they say
Hey, Jonathan, sorry to interrupt you. I'm not getting audio on my side. Is anyone else experiencing that? Yes, we've lost Jonathan's audio. It says that you're not muted on AirMeet, which is interesting. Do you want to just quickly double check that and make sure that you're all good? It seemed to cut out really randomly. There you go.
All right. Well, that was weird. All right. So let me stop the share for a sec here.
It's all good now. You're back.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're just about done thanks for chiming in and let me know. So we're just about done. Just get to publishing, and then we are there. So, okay. All right. So here we are. Here's our session. So, you can export it as a file on your computer, or you have this handy publishing tool where if you had, say, an account with SoundCloud or something, you could publish it directly there, and you could set the loudness for what it needs to be all in one place. And you have to have your account with all your info there, but you just finish that up and it's going to send it right there. So it takes away another step where you just publish directly to your feed for it to go out into the world. So that's the idea. Just, a brief overview of everything that's in Hindenburg, all this kind of stuff. And, tidying up the sound, all of the effects that we should get to just real quickly before Q&A. There's so many things that you can do housed in these effects. I'm just going to do a new session here and just show you. You also, for taking in files, sometimes you actually can just drag something like an audio file right in there if you wanted to. And if I play this, you're going to hear it's not really so great.
So they launched a website called One Frame of Fame.
Right? You hear this really harsh hissing noise in the back. Here, where there are these effects, all of the effects, as you can see here, they're very simple to use. There's one knob that you turn up and hear how it is. So I'm just going to put on the noise reduction effect. And what you would do is just adjust this. This eliminates background noise. So I'm going to adjust this up.
So they launched a website called One Frame of Fame. On the site, you're presented with one frame from the video.
And it takes away the background noise like that. So that's so useful if you're going to end up getting some tricky bits of audio. So let's turn it over to Q&A now. If you guys have any questions, hopefully we can answer that, and hopefully.
Great. It looks like we have a question. Can we create templates that contain the common structure of a podcast?
Yes. I'll just show you. You do this. In Properties, this is under the File drop-down menu. You have where you can select the amount of tracks that you have. You can select to have more or less clipboards. But like if you wanted here, you can add more tracks. You can rename them whatever you want, host or whatever. And you can then save your session here so that every time you open up a new session, it's host, interview 1, interview 2, music, ambiance. You can customize it however you want, and you can always go back to how it comes stock too. So the answer to that is, yep, super, super easy to do.
Great stuff. I thought it might be good. I just thought it might be good to cover a few little things just to show again. Question is, with the trim handle, what do we look out for the trim handle, and when might we?
So what you look out for is you look out for
Do you want to share your screen? Yeah.
Yeah, the icon to look like this. And the reason that you want to do that, there are a lot of reasons that could come up. Sometimes you just maybe you have like a few regions going on, like you've got a few things here, and you maybe you've got like multiple tracks, and you just want to like let's say this is some ambiance music sound. You just were like, oh no, I just want it to go to here. It's just an easy way to kind of trim it away. So that's probably the most common way to do it. But there are a number of reasons that comes up.
Great stuff. Really great question from Catherine. Beginner in creating a podcast, would I be able to edit without too much of a learning curve? I think editing, it really depends on the kind of editing you've done in the past. And I think actually having a base and comfort with computers, it's actually quite funny because I think computers are becoming less and less used. We're almost using tablets and those kind of devices more so. So I do think it comes hand in hand with, basic computer skills, understanding of multiple sources of audio, things like that. So it really depends on your base skills in those areas. But Jonathan, I don't know, what was your sort of learning curve? Because you kind of came from the audiobook creation side of things, and you also have done a bit of podcasting. What are your thoughts for a bit?
Yeah, I mean, like anything. So, but I'm really coming from the music world, and that stuff is just by its nature is more complicated. So I think that it's really not so bad, but you just have to get used to what you're looking at, and then you have to get used to. I have trained a lot of people that are beginners and are unfamiliar with the stuff, and it feels at first like you're looking at an alien language, but you do get used to what you're seeing. And also get used to, like, I'd practice things like undo a step, do something, undo it. Just get used to, like, it's not gone forever. And you can make mistakes and go back, that kind of thing. And dragging things out, it'll probably feel like a novelty at first, and then you'll just kind of acclimate to it. So I would do something, undo it, take little steps.
Yeah, definitely take it step by step as well. We have heaps of tutorials, like, going through the steps as well. So check that out, I guess. But yeah, I think also, after this session, we can jump on the tables and sort of get other people to share their experiences of what their learning curve has been like as well. Okay, so the next question is, can you enter non-Latin Russian characters in fields? I know that this has sometimes some characters have caused issues with saving sessions or things like that. I don't know, Jonathan, do you know?
No, sorry. That I don't know about. That might be a support question. I've only in there, so.
I'll pop the support contact into the chat box. But yeah, sorry about that. Not quite aware. Oh, I just moved one to answer by accident. Let me get that question back that I just lost. Oh, so sorry. Can you export mixes to various audio files?
Yes. You mean like to MP3 and WAV and all of that? The answer is yes. You have an option to do that when you export. There's a drop-down menu and you select what you want. You can also, using that publish feature, you can publish in different places at different levels of loudness, actually. So if you had something you produced that for a radio and it was going to later air in a podcast, you could do both very easily. So that's actually super handy too.
Great. All right. I am just going to pop in some information in the chat that I mentioned just before. So yeah, definitely hope you guys got a lot out of today's training. We are always doing something online, so come join us, hang out, come say hi. We love hearing from you guys. At the moment for World Radio Day, Hindenburg has 40% off all products. So whether that's Journalist Pro, Upgrade, the ABC audiobook program, everything. Yeah, it's a good time to snap that up. All right. So do you want to just jump on the Journalist and Journalist Pro comparison screen? And Mark is celebrating because you've got 40% off. Well done, Mark. You've made a good choice, I think.
Okay. All right. So here it is. Here's, you know what? I'll get rid of that little screen there. All right. So here you can see some of the differences between Journalist and Journalist Pro. Okay. And as Anita said, there's a 40% off sale for today. although depending where you are, there's not much of today left. But there it is, nonetheless. And so, any questions that you have, also, you can always ask us in support. But hopefully, we give you just an idea of what it's all about and why it's great, and why people like it.
All right. I think we're going to wrap up the formalities here. This is our last webinar for World Radio Day. So we're celebrating the end of World Radio Day. To finish up, I'm going to end this session here, but what's going to happen in AMI is that you will be able to join us on the table. So would be great to say hi. Feel free to stick around. I'll keep that open for about half an hour. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for coming along. Thank you so much, Jonathan, as well.